What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and this video is going to be a little bit controversial. I'm going to talk about the top 5 things I hate about my 2022 Chevy Bolt EUV. Now, if you guys are unfamiliar, I've had my Bolt since the end of May, so it's been about 4 months. I've been daily driving this thing. I've put about 2,500 miles, maybe a little bit more on it. And I think I'm ready to talk about not only the top 5 things I hate about it, but also, on the contrary, the top 5 things I love about it. And I'll have that video coming out after this video. So if you're interested in the things that I really enjoy about the Bolt, definitely subscribe so you don't miss that video. But this one's gonna be mainly focused on the 5 things that I don't like. And I wanna start by saying that overall, in the grand scheme of things, I absolutely love the Bolt. So I'm nitpicking a little bit here, but really there are some things that I really just don't care for, or I think that Chevy should look to improve going forward on the Bolt to make this thing even better than it already is. All right, so with that disclaimer out of the way, let's hop inside the cabin and take a look at number 1. Now, basically all of the things that I dislike about the Bolt come down to technology that doesn't work exactly like it should, or cabin design features. I think things like the range and the charging capacity, well, all of those things could be improved, and I think will be, incrementally improved over the years. I think they're pretty good and pretty competitive, and I haven't really had any problems with those types of things. The things that frustrate me from a tech perspective and a comfort perspective are more significant than simply range or fast charging speeds and things like that. Speaking of the fast charging thing, just a quick note. You can use the regen braking paddle, to slow the vehicle down. And if you're going decent speeds and you pull that regen paddle, that thing can get up there as far as the amount it's able to regen. It goes well past the advertised 55 kilowatt hours fast charging. You can get 60, 70, 79 kilowatt, regen coming back. So I think there's a little bit of a hidden secret there. Also, there was an interesting video over on the EV Revolution Show's YouTube channel, so give them a shout out there.
They didn't give me a firm number. They told me what the amperage was, and we know that this is a 400 volt architecture, so I was able to do the math and get that confirmed by GM that we are pushing about 60 kilowatts of fast charging, which is up from about 55.
60 kilowatt hour fast charging. So that's more than the 55 kilowatt hour that was already advertised. So there's not exactly a concrete answer on how fast the thing can actually charge, but I think it's more than GM is letting on. So, take that for what you will. But let's go ahead and get to number 1. Now, this one may be obvious to some of you if you have owned a previous generation Bolt or have sat inside of a 2022 Bolt EV or EUV, and that is just the seat comfort. Now, GM advertised that they made big improvements. The seats are fully redesigned. They're new and improved and more bolstered and more comfortable. All these different types of improvements that have been done to the seats. Well, listen, they're better than the previous generation seats, but they are still on the bottom tier in my opinion. At least the cloth versions, they're at the bottom tier of seat comfort in vehicles that I've sat in. I work at a car dealership. I sit in a lot of different types of vehicles and a lot of different seat materials and things like that. And these are by far one of the lowest tier ones that I've ever sat in. Now, I will say that the leather seats that you can get on the Premier Bolt EUV or the 2LT EV are much more comfortable than these cloth seats. So if seating comfort is extremely important to you, definitely go with the higher trim level and get those leather seats. And another thing that's a little bit frustrating is, like I said earlier, I do sit in a ton of different vehicles at a ton of different price points and talk about the features that those vehicles have in other videos like you've seen on this channel or my car channels over on the Bachman channel. But a lot of vehicles at this same price point, which is about $35,000 and much lower, have heated seats and power seats standard. And the Bolt EUV here, at its current price point, doesn't. You have base model seats. This is like the seats you find in the bottom tier Trax or bottom tier Chevy Spark. No standard heated option, no power seats here on the LT. Now, I think you can add them on as an option and you can add heated seats as an option, but come on, Chevy. Heated and at least 4 6-way power seats should be just the standard now. Come on, you're talking about a $35,000 all-electric vehicle. But let's get into number 2, and that is this armrest right here. Now, this thing is deep. It's got a nice deep pocket. You can put your little key fob in there to set up your teen driver mode and things like that. So it's got some nice functionality. No additional ports though, unfortunately. But this thing is just too small for 2 people. If I put my arm here, and I'm not even a big guy, but I put my arm here, I'm taking up the entire thing. My wife and I are constantly, I'm trying to give her as much as possible, so I'm putting my arm on the very edge of this thing. It's just not big enough for two people to put their arms on. So either put individual armrests here for driver and passenger, or just make this center console bigger. It's just one of those things I run into on a regular basis where I'm like, I wish that was just a little bit different, just to make the cabin feel more premium. Now we'll get back to some of the cabin designs in just a second, but I want to talk about this little display. You used to have 3 customization options on this display. Now you only have 2, which are modern and enhanced, and I switch back and forth between them every once in a while just to keep it interesting. There's not a whole lot of difference between the two, and I'm a little disappointed in the lack of customization that you can actually do on this display itself. Yes, you can put on things like driver assistance. If you have the higher trim levels, you'll have adaptive cruise control on there. You can put like a timer, you can see your tire pressure, average speed, trip computer, things like that. So everything you're used to seeing, in my view, it's just too messy. I want to be able to customize it and make it as clean as humanly possible. I almost only want to see my speed like right in the center as a big old display, maybe with the regen braking, meter on the side, but I want to be able to customize this really to my liking, and you just really can't. On this display, number 4, it actually shows your driver assistance features. And let me tell you, if you do not have the top trims that have adaptive cruise control or super cruise or something like that, you are going to be disappointed in these lackluster driver assistance features. Now again, I work at a car dealership, so I drive a plethora of different vehicles. I've done tech reviews on this channel with some of the other models that I really like. Hyundai is absolutely killing it with their Santa Fe's and their Sonatas, things like that have really nice driver assistance features, even standard ones on almost every model. And Chevy has some nice ones too on other trims, but I actually recently drove a Tesla for the first time, and just lumping that in there, obviously in the EV segment, really kind of opens your eyes to what is out there. But the driver assistance features on the 2022 Chevy Bolt, if you do not have Super Cruise or adaptive cruise control, they just kind of seem like they're thrown on there for the sake of putting it on the marketing material, which sometimes that is the case. It's like the lane keep assist with the lane warning. Like the lane warning's fine and there's a little bit of tug, but it doesn't actually keep you in the center of the lane. It could not be trusted or used for any functionality like this. In fact, it'll let me drift pretty far out of the lane before it jerks me back to the other side. Adaptive cruise control, lane centering, lane keeping assist, highway drive assist, all these different, marketing terms for other companies, driver assistance features, having used those on much, much lower priced vehicles, having them work incredibly well and being worthwhile features to use, it just makes me even more disappointed in the driver assistance features that Chevy put here on the Bolt EUV. So like I said, that lane keeping assist where it kind of tugs your wheel back and forth, it's basically useless. In an emergency situation, if you're really drifting off the road and it needs to pull you back, like, sure, it's helpful for that, but it doesn't make the driving experience more enjoyable, it just makes it frustrating. And that's not what it's supposed to do. Another one that's a little weird to me is the vehicle distance monitor. It tells you like how many seconds you are away from the car in front of you. You're supposed to do like mental math in your head to figure out how close you actually are. Like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna hit this car in 2.2 seconds, which means I'm exactly, 280 feet away from this. No, it's pointless, basically. It does have some things that are actually helpful, like the little LED up front that gives you like front pedestrian braking, forward collision warnings, forward collision braking, things like that will actually protect you in, the case of a potential front end collision. Things like that are great and helpful, but those are things you don't want to have to use. Those are emergency type systems. The things I'm talking about are more like luxury systems that make the vehicle less of a constant focused driving experience and more of a relaxed driving experience. Now, number 5, again, is one of those things that it's not ever something you would really need to use. Like, you don't need to go 0 to 60 in 2.2 seconds. Or whatever I was going in that Model 3 Performance that I drove. You do not ever need to do that, and you don't ever need top speeds really over maybe 90 miles an hour, I think. It doesn't really matter that you can't go over 95 miles an hour here on the Chevy Bolt, but the fact that they do a software cap on how fast you can go in this thing is just a little bit frustrating from my perspective. Like, there are situations where you need to get up to speed. There are highways that are, 75 mile an hour, 80 mile an hour highways. And if you're trying to keep up with the flow of traffic and you're capped at 95, you might not be able to do that. Or if you need to pass in some kind of emergency situation and you can't do that because you're limited by software, that can be frustrating. I would like to see them improve that going forward. I would also like to see Chevy add in maybe a performance version of the Bolt. I know they are not targeting necessarily the Tesla market. This is a more daily driver, city cruiser, gliding around town kind of vehicle. It's made for that. It's not a performance model, but how cool would it be if they had like an RS Bolt that could go 0 to 60 in like 4 seconds or something like that? That'd be pretty cool. Even if it had a little bit less range, maybe it had a 200-mile range or something like that. That would be really cool, and I hope they add that in the future. So those are the top 5 features that I dislike about the Chevy Bolt EUV, but I'm gonna give you guys 2 quick bonus features. These are things with 2,656 miles on this model are just things that bother me a little bit. And one of those is this rear view mirror. This is like the lowest tier of the low rear view mirror. It has no auto dimming. It has no universal home link garage door controls, no camera system built into it. It's just this little flip down mirror. And I'm a little bit of a rear view mirror snob just because I had such a nice premium rear view mirror in my Crosstrek. Even though it was a lower tier Crosstrek, it was a premium. I still had auto dimming. I still had a compass. I still had universal home link garage door controls. Still had all that stuff built into it. And Chevy just slapped what boils down to just a little flimsy piece of glass up here up top. If you go up to the Premier, you can get the rear view mirror camera. So there's a pretty significant gap between the base model and the Premier. But just putting like a auto dimming rear view mirror in this thing, or just making the rear view mirror camera standard, I know that would take a lot and it wouldn't differentiate the models that much, but just this price point, you're still talking about a mid $30,000 vehicle. Like, and you get this little flimsy rear view mirror. I don't know, it just takes away from the feel of the vehicle. And then the last bonus feature is just kind of an overarching thing, and that is just the cabin materials. Now, I'll say this, I think the cabin is a much more premium and good looking cabin than the previous generation, but there's places where it just feels cheap. And that makes sense because you want to have a relatively light vehicle, and you know, this is again more of the base model. But basically everything from the glove box down is purely just plastic. It's all just hard touch plastic. Even the center console is this flimsy, hard touch plastic. And then there's a ton of piano black plastic, which I don't love because it's fingerprint and dust magnet, as you guys may be able to see. I have to wipe my dash off constantly because it gets so dusty. But just the amount of basic, boring black plastic all over this thing is just not the best. Now, the top half of the cabin, I don't mind at all. It's got, you know, a soft touch, kind of faux leather material with accent stitching. And again, you've got this nice satin accent that runs around, and there's not a lot of obnoxious colors. Even above the glove box, there's more of that soft touch kind of leatherette material with a gray accent stitching. But again, just being in other vehicles at a lower price point and seeing more premium materials throughout the entirety of the cabin just makes this stand out a little bit more. So those are the top 5 things that I hate about my 2022 Chevy Bolt EUV. Again, I'll have a video coming out very soon about the top 5 things that I love about my 2022 Chevy Bolt EUV. So if you're interested in that, don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss that video. So thanks so much for watching, guys. Drop a like on the video if you loved it. Tell me in the comments down below, is there one that I missed, or is there something that you don't like about the Bolt? Let's have a conversation down in the comments. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to be among the first to see every single new video the second I hit publish. We'll see you in the next one.